There's insanity in the control room. Who's got a hammer?
It's like shark NATO except for poop. There are some whores in this house.
Burmecia, they say, pronounce it Burmecia, a real beautiful company.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Stop with the questions! Celebrate!
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Clean coal, meaning they're taking out coal, they're going to clean it.
Around the nation, Walmart Nation. What's up, everybody? It's Friday. It's a show. We got a show. All right, so fun times. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jeff Waldorf. You're watching Around the Nation with me, Jeff Waldorf. Okay, sounds a bit redundant. Yes, because it is. All right, anyway. We got fun. We got disaster. So we're going to start off. Oh, and we have good news, actually. We've got great news. Amazon. Labor. Yes, labor just got a giant win today. So we're going to be talking about that. That's the final story of the day. So I'm just going to leave you off on the weekend with something nice. But before we do, of course, we're going to talk about Disney. We have an interesting segment here involving Disney and the governor of Florida taking away Disney's special privileges. Ooh, oh, what are those special privileges? And why? And why might I actually agree in some way to what they're doing? Not for the why, but for the what. This is a very interesting show. We have Trump being homophobic, of course, and ripping people off. That's always interesting. We have Madison Cawthorn being defended by a QAnon candidate. But wait, again on this one, there's a little bit of truth to what you're saying. Oh, fascinating. This is a very, very interesting show where I'm going to talk about how some right-wingers might actually be making some interesting points. Even if they're doing it for ridiculous reasons and are also insane. So there's a lot of nuance in this show. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what we're going to talk about and what we might actually find an agreement. Most open-minded person in America, but not so open-minded as to have your brain fall out. That's very, very important. All right, so interesting stuff as always. Before we dive into it, please like and share. Very, very important that you do so. Helps us out greatly. A little bit of a small warning too, my ADHD, a bit of out of control today. So there's going to be a lot of hilarious mess ups, screw ups, and things that you could probably post out of context. And so this should be a fun show today, everybody. Fun show. All right. Anyway, so let's dive in. Let's start out with Ron DeSantis. Interesting. DeSantis, culture warrior. It's the culture wars. Begin the war. No, the war has already begun. All right. It appears that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has decided to take on a very large and profitable corporation, even threatening as to remove special status from them. Oh, interesting. So why is Ron DeSantis suddenly, finally, taking a sort of populist stance on removing some special privileges, special tax breaks, and things like that for Disney? Well, it turns out it's because it's fighting against the so-called woke agenda. So, interesting. Now, I'm going to show you a video here. Here he is, Ron DeSantis, talking on Fox News about what's going on and what the decision, or what brought him to this decision. Take a look.
Got to ask you what you did yesterday, and you basically said, hey, Disney, I don't like your stance against this bill, this parent rights bill, so maybe we're going to revisit your special status in Florida. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, over many, many decades, Brian, they've gotten incredible treatment from the Florida legislature, and they are treated on a pedestal. This one corporation is treated differently than everybody else. And so that's not something I've ever supported. But now in the legislature, you see a movement to reevaluate those special privileges. And so at the end of the day, I think Disney has gotten over its skis on this. And look, there's policy disputes, and that's fine. But when you're trying to impose a woke ideology on our state, we view that as a significant threat. This wokeness will destroy this country if we let it run unabated. So in Florida, we take a very big stand against that. And I think the legislature is going to look at that. And 6 months ago, it would have been unthinkable that they would be willing to reevaluate those special privileges. I think they are going to do that now. And that's going to represent a major shift for our state. But at the end of the day, I don't believe in special treatment for any corporation.
Sure.
All right. A few interesting things in that. For one, this wokeness is going to destroy the country. I'm sorry, what? How is being more inclusive destroying this country? Nah, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. But let me just note that the total irony here on this, I don't like it when any company, any corporation gets special privileges. I don't like when government favors any corporation. Oh, really? Well, that's funny because one of your donors had invested in Regeneron. That's during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, you had the monoclonal antibodies, which against some of the earlier variants actually worked very well. They don't work so well anymore against the more advanced variants such as Delta variant, which thankfully is no longer the dominant strain here. Now you have the less deadly but more infectious Omicron variant and the Omicron BA. So anyway, Regeneron doesn't really work as well against those. But anyway, what you had during that whole thing is Ron DeSantis pushing Regeneron, promoting Regeneron, that again, his donor had some investments in. Now that's really, really interesting. Very interesting. I don't favor one corporation over another, except when my donors are invested in a company that makes Regeneron. So I'm going to not only push Regeneron, but I'm going to wage war against masks and vaccines that reduce the spread of COVID-19. No, and are actually much cheaper as well. No, we're going to push this treatment. That's what a Regeneron treatment that's over $1,000, while the vaccine. And by the way, this is cost that the government had to at the time foot the bill on, versus a vaccine that cost about $25. So, interesting. But I don't favor one corporation over the other. No. Again, this really does show, illustrates very, very well how much he, chooses who he supports by way of ideology. And again, they didn't go after Disney when Disney shut up, when Disney wasn't saying anything, when Disney wasn't shamed into actually taking a stand on Florida's disastrous Don't Say Gay bill. Height of irony. The height of irony. Again, Republicans actually threatening a corporation for once, but not for bad labor practices, but just for the sin of being woke. The wokeness is too wokey. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Now, again, I actually do agree that no corporation should get special treatment. Now, we'll get into what about that I actually might agree with. Because again, I don't agree. I don't think that any company should get special treatment. And when you look at what they are doing for what they did for Florida, what Florida did for Disney, I mean, that's crazy. So now, back in 2020 and in 2019, Disney actually got about $500 million in tax breaks from the state of Florida. But that's, of course, that's really par for the course. That's fairly normal. But in talking about special privileges, in 1967, Florida politicians passed something called the Reedy Creek Improvement Act. And I kid you not, that act basically allows Florida to govern itself. Not Florida, Disney, to govern itself in Florida as its own city-state, essentially. That was signed by Republican Governor Claude Kirk back in '67. I had no idea. Now, what it did is effectively created two municipal-like governments, Bay Creek and Reedy Creek, to regulate the Lake Buena Vista land where the Walt Disney World Resort operates. Resort operates, and boards are elected based on the preference of the property owners, which again would be Disney. The RCID operates its own fire protection, security, utilities, and city planning. Its board of supervisors is selected by, again, landowners, which would be Disney, effectively meaning the district corporation installs the government that regulates the 38.5 square mile property. The district effectively taxes the land and operates government services with that revenue, allowing essentially self-government. So yeah, it's a lot like what the Vatican is going on. So I had no idea. This blew my mind. Disney is essentially the Vatican. That's crazy. Like, you have corporate governance. A corporation is the government. And I look, we talk about, corporate representation in our government, the corporatocracy. That's a literal corporatocracy. That's a literal government running a city. That's crazy. That's totally insane. But anyway, nobody cared up until Disney started being slightly more pro-LGBT. That's fascinating. And by the way, they didn't care. Republicans didn't care when Disney was giving them massive campaign contributions and staying silent on these social issues. Now, look, when you look at Disney, they've actually had a long history of not only bizarre anti-Semitism. You just look at, Walt Disney himself, super anti-Semitic. but also has a history of homophobia. I mean, let me give you some examples, all right? Back in the 1990s, Disney actually became one of the last studios to offer domestic partner benefits over industry-wide concerns regarding the cost of HIV/AIDS treatment, according to the LA Times. So look, back in the 90s, they were the last studio in Hollywood. So all these other studios, and again, this is back in the 1990s, were like, hey, we got to at least offer some domestic partner benefits for gay couples. Okay, well, that's they're pretty late on that, but it got worse. It's actually much worse. In fact, attendees of Disney parks were actually banned from dancing with people of the same sex until the year of 1985. Wow. Now, they actually had to drop the requirement, their policy, following a court ruling. So they had to take Disney to court saying that, hey, this thing where you're not allowing us to dance with members of the same sex, that's kind of weird. Prior to that decision, the company had defended this same-sex dancing ban in court for 4 long years. Jesus. And more recently, Pixar workers say Disney had a history of censoring just about everything related to gay. This is according to a letter from leadership from the LGBTQIA+ employees of Pixar and their allies that was recently obtained by EW. Part of this letter read, quote, "We at Pixar have recently personally witnessed beautiful stories full of diverse characters come back from Disney corporate reviews, shaved down to crumbs of what they once were. Nearly every moment of overtly gay affection is cut at Disney's behest, regardless of when there is protest from both the creative teams and executive leadership at Pixar." So it's funny because you look at what conservatives have complained about, and it's like, oh my God, they're shoving the homosexual agenda is being shoved down our throat as we speak. That's a crumb. The writers are like, no, we're trying to put this bad boy can hold so much gay. We are trying to shove as much gay in there as we can, and they won't let us. They won't let us shove all the gay in there. They keep taking the gay out. And even with that, conservatives still complain, bitch, and cry and moan like no other. No, we should totally gay up Disney. Disney needs to be about 150% more gay. We need shove all the gay in there. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see what happens. Yeah, more gay. All right. No, I'm definitely in favor. Yeah, more gay. There's not enough gay in my Disney. All right. So now, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing that changed Disney, that made this stance, right? And got people like Ron DeSantis all verklempt, right? Clutching the pearls, right? They decided to appeal to people who have money. Gay people have money. Turns out gay money spends just as well as straight money. By the way, there is no such thing as gay money. Money's money. And that's what the corporate executives are looking at. They're like, they have money. And we have all these talented, by the way, Disney is full of talented people who are a part of the LGBTQI community. And so what they're doing is that they're not only have so much gay talent, but they're also like, hey, we make more money when we're pro-gay, when we're pro-LGBT. And so we'll allow a little bit of gay to get through, just to appease them and to try to not piss off conservatives. Now, the thing is, they walked that line for a while, but they can't anymore because here you have Republicans that have brought back the old culture wars after, they lost in 2020 and have really started pushing this to the forefront once again. So, going after the gay is back for the Republicans. It really is kind of proof positive, by the way, that the culture wars, look, gay people, we won the culture wars, right? The left has, as far as LGBTQ. We're still working on trans rights, right? And trans rights, very, very important. There's been an unprecedented assault on them. And you might be wondering then, how can you say that we've won, that the left has won the culture wars when you have such a gigantic pushback on gay rights? Now, here's the thing. The way that the government works, Republicans don't need a majority of people, of voters, to hold power. What they need, and what they're appealing to, is a very loud minority to turn out in their incredibly gerrymandered districts to vote for them. And so what brings these people out? The culture war. The culture war. And so, look, that's how you know, right? We have this, again, super, super broken system where you have a very, very small amount of people deciding these elections. And so, look, these small amount of people, they're very heavily involved. They get spurred on by this stuff. And so they show up and put these hateful Republicans in power. And that's exactly who these Republicans will always appeal to, will always pander to. That's all they need. That's all they need. So now, one last thing. This is DeSantis doing so-called right-wing populism, right? So now the message is, well, I'm taking on this big corporation. Okay, for what? For being too woke. Notice how right-wing populism is never about better working conditions, never about better pays and benefits for workers, or taking subsidies away from billion-dollar companies that don't actually need those subsidies. No, it's never about that. And yes, sometimes they do threaten the subsidies. Why? Because, well, it's not because you don't need them and we could, reinvest this money back into the community. No, it's always for the same message. You're too woke. Too woke, too pro-gay, too all of that stuff. Can't have it. Oh my God, there's somebody in my Disney film besides a cisgender white man. I can't handle it. My brain is melting down. All I feel is rage. Western culture being destroyed by the wokeists. The United States of America will exist no more. It will become the United States of wokeism. We can't have it. That's what it's really all about for them. They can't handle it. They can't handle anybody that's different. And so, look, nobody can give any sort of coherent argument as to why the inclusion of more people will destroy the country. The inclusion of different kinds of people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community, how that will destroy this country, this nation, I have no idea. And look, the reason they can't answer the question is because they don't have an answer to the question. For them, it's always, always about the feelings. They have these very strong feelings, and that's they're going to express them. All right. That went on a lot longer than I thought it would. Whoops. Yeah, that was way too long of a story. I told you the ADHD is it's got me today. But we're going to be on the same subject here. Former President Donald Trump recently told a supporter of his that he doesn't look gay.
Thank you very much. Where's gays for Trump? You don't look gay.
You know, he said you don't look gay.
We did great with the gay population.
You don't look gay. What is a gay supposed to look like? Honestly, like what kind of question is this? Like, oh, you don't look gay. Okay, but seriously, what does that even mean? Does like Donald Trump think that there's some sort of flashing neon sign that's supposed to be above a gay person's head? This is gay. Like a label? I don't understand. I don't know. I don't understand. Like this super old school homophobia. I mean, you want to talk about stereotypes, right? Gay is not a look. Gay is not an aesthetic. It's basically who you are attracted to, who you love. That's it. I mean, seriously. But now, going from Trump, because we know Trump's a doofus, right? He's a doofus, he's a dipshit, he believes in all these old school stereotypes about, black people, gay people, Asian people. You name it. He believes the stereotypes about them. It really is strange. It's bizarre. But no, let's go to the group itself, okay, and their reaction to this, because I think it's really telling. Peter Boykin, the founder of Gays for Trump, recently spoke to Newsweek about this. And he said, and by the way, Boykin said the person that Trump had addressed probably wouldn't look gay because it's a stereotype that fits more with the typical look of leftist LGBT. Not saying some of us might look fabulous and gay. Now, apparently, he said, Boykin said that a person in this group would blend in with the non-gay guests unless they decided to wear a flamboyant outfit. But apparently that was a joke. Kind of a terrible joke. Okay. Right. So, look. By the way, there's one more statement here. Gays for Trump, he said, is a nationwide movement full of various types of gays, and the gay community has a lot of diversity. The difference is the Gays for Trump lean right. Okay, but why? Why would you? That's the question. That's always a question that I have for a person who is gay that's a Republican. Why be, if you are gay, part of a party that hates you? I don't understand. I just don't understand. Yes, he's right in saying there was one part about that statement that was right. Yes, gay people are a diverse group of people. But it's not like, oh, we have a small difference of opinion on some very select, political issues. No, the Republican Party, first of all, doesn't believe that gay people should have rights. Members consistently link gay people with pedophilia, and again, want to deny them civil rights. I mean, again, you look at all the anti-LGBTQ plus laws that Republicans are pushing all over the country. Why would you support that? If you're a gay person, you vote for Republicans, you're voting for someone to strip all of your rights from you. Why would you do that? Why would you want to do that? And of course, we know the answer. Because look, a lot of these gay Republican groups, there's one thing that they all have in common. They're wealthy. They're rich. Again, Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin is a very wealthy gay right-winger. Now, the reason that he's wealthy is because he helps demonize the left. Now he says, I'm from the left. I didn't leave the left left me. No. There's no part about Dave Rubin that is the left. No, but what he is a useful tool. That's what he is. Willing to sell himself out to anything for money. Boykin, he's another useful tool. But see, you see how they look at gay people, though. They're a punchline. That's what it is. It's a punchline. Hey, let's all laugh at the gay because he doesn't fit my outdated stereotype of who I think the people are. Again, the only thing that he said that was true is that gay people are a diverse group of people with diverse opinions. And apparently, and look, by the way, you can be a gay person and believe in like smaller government, lower tax rates and things like that. Okay, fine, but why would you, again, align yourself with people that despise you? that literally, in a lot of cases, want you dead. Now, you remember a lot of the, or at least some of the major donors, going back to, for example, the family who supported Mike Lindell, supported Donald Trump, they would send out people to other countries to lobby for, in some cases, anti-LGBTQ laws, anti-gay laws that would put gay people to death. You're going to support that side? You're going to be a member of that side? Oh, but again, I'm trying to change the party with it. No, there's no changing that party. There's no changing that base. That base is who they are. They despise gay people. They despise members of the LGBTQ plus community, and they want them dead at the end of the day, or not to exist. Shove them back in the closet. They believed in, so-called gay reparative therapy, but they would essentially torture people and say, "Oh, that's how we get rid of the gay." No, it's torture, and it doesn't work. Disgusting. And so, what's really disgusting is the portion of people who are in that community, who are gay, that are more than willing to sell out members of their own group just to make a quick buck. That's all it is. And you can find people like that, members of any group, and they're all the same kind of people, just disgusting and looking only out for themselves. I wish I could remember the name of the guy who stepped down from Facebook. He's gay, super conservative, and working to recruit young people to support Trump, super rich. Yeah, look, again, the wealth really has something to do in common, right? Because, hey, they're wealthy, they'll debase themselves. I mean, you have so many people that end up debasing themselves. Again, Dave Rubin's probably the best example. He and Ben Shapiro, I wouldn't even bake you a cupcake. I wouldn't bake you anything. Okay, well, I'm still your friend, though. You're great. It's so ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. These people willing to sell themselves and everything they are, the people that they are, out for cash. It's ridiculous. Okay. What about Milo? Oh, you mean Milo Yiannopoulos? Milo Yiannopoulos, who is claiming to now be straight? Sure. Believe it when I see it. All right. Former President Donald Trump can add another person to the long list of people that he has ripped off. The White House photographer. Oh, interesting. So now the New York Times is reporting that as Trump's first term drew to a close, Shayla Craighead, the chief White House photographer, wanted to put out a book of some of the most significant images that she had captured from the Trump White House from the 4 years that Donald Trump was president. So now there's nothing unusual about that. In fact, that's been a thing for every White House photographer since Ronald Reagan. They all would put out their book of pictures and moments that they have captured on camera and all that stuff. Okay. In fact, George W. Bush and Barack Obama even wrote forewords for their own photographers. And so these photographers made some money. All right, cool. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But with Donald Trump, well, let's just say that he had to do the most Trump thing ever, and to try to squeeze every dollar he could out of other people's work. Now, Trump aides had initially asked Craighead for a cut of her book in advance. But why? You didn't do any of the work. You didn't do any of the work. You didn't take the pictures. These are my pictures that I took of you. I was the photographer there. And so why would I give you money? Well, they sweeten the pot with a little bit of an offer, saying, oh, well, we'll write the foreword, which other presidents have written for free, and we'll help with promotion. Okay, but why? Why would I need your promotion? And why would I want why would I want to give you my money from the book of work that I did for you to write a stupid foreword? No. And in fact, knowing how it's Trump, having his foreword might actually detract from the sales. Just saying. But now, that's not enough. It actually gets worse for her. The aides then decided to ask her to hold off on the project. Oh, no, hey, you know what? Hold off on that book. Hold off on that book, okay? In the meantime, Trump published his own, using her photos and photos of other people. So basically, he just took work that she had done, her pictures, as well as other people's pictures. And by the way, to be fair, it's in the public domain, but he takes the work and then he puts it in his own book, captions it, and then is selling it. That book is titled Our Journey Together. Our Journey Together, yes. And it came out in December and includes no photo credits. There is some credit in the final page, the acknowledgments. Otherwise, no photo credit. Now, again, when you go back to during the time that she was taking these photos, that she was actually doing this work, Trump would regularly say insulting things about her while questioning her skills, as a photographer in front of White House guests. So wait a minute. Apparently those pictures are terrible. I really question your skills. But then later on, I'm going to steal those same photos and caption them in order to sell it in my book. And by the way, he made a lot of money doing this. How much? How much? According to Trump's publisher, a company that was co-founded by, shocker, Donald Trump Jr., it's a family affair. The book has actually sold 300,000 copies at about $75 a piece. For the unsigned version, guess what a signed version costs? $229.99. Just for the unsigned version, sales would net that company about $20 million off pictures that Donald Trump does not own. Wow. And on top of his advance, the ex-president will presumably be taking a cut of the book sales. She got robbed. And again, her work, her pictures, and he just took it right out of her pocket. What allegedly rich person does that? Does something like, come on. Now, again, to be fair, if you're a billionaire, you generally, you did that by stealing the value of your workers' labor. You don't get to be a billionaire without stepping on people, okay? So this is probably one of the most blatant examples of stepping on people for that. And by the way, alleged billionaire for Trump. Now, that said, during an interview with the Times, Craighead actually offered no criticism of Donald Trump. Very, very bizarre. In fact, here's what she said about the whole situation when asked. I stay apolitical as possible, as I am a neutral historical documentarian. By staying neutral, I am able to remain a keen observer. Okay, and so, look, I get it, but this isn't about politics. He stole your work. And again, put the acknowledgement after insulting you day to day on the final page in really small type. So now the project, of course, that she was working on, well, she's no longer going to do it. Why would you? Why would you? What would be the point? What would be the point of releasing the book? Her work's already out there, but captioned by Donald Trump. Now, just because she wanted to stay neutral doesn't mean everyone else has to, and a lot of people weighed in. Eric Draper, the chief White House photographer under George W. Bush, had told the Times, quote, "It's a slap in the face. I would be disappointed if I were in her shoes." Well, yeah, I agree. I would be as well. Here, you also have former White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham talking to the New York Times. Shahan's a very talented photographer, and this was really all of her hard work. I just came thinking, what a shame that he is actually now profiting off of it. But then again, this is a guy who is hawking caps and all kinds of stuff right now to raise money for himself. But it's actually worse than that. Y'all remember that he created a fake college to scam students. And Trump University, a fraud. You know that the Trump family also literally defrauded a charity. They don't care who they screw over. So again, this is no surprise to anyone, that seeing that Donald Trump has once again stolen work and screwed someone else over. Now, Taylor Budowich, however, a spokesperson for Trump, did not dispute that Craighead had discussed doing her own book with an aide, or that it had been suggested that Trump receive a cut in advance. And in a statement, he said this. He said that Trump decided to do his own book first because of his longtime love of photo selection. Saying this, quote, "President Trump has always had an eye for beautiful and engaging curation, which came alive through the pages of his book." You want to see an example of his engaging curation? Because, by the way, throughout this entire book, he captioned all these photos. Here's one of them. "Attempting to listen to crazy Nancy Pelosi in the Oval Office. Such natural disagreement." And another image of Nancy Pelosi. He said this. "She was screaming and shaking like a leaf. She's effing crazy, hence the name Crazy Nancy." And then, of course, he talked about late GOP Senator John McCain. Trump noted this, "Asking for a job for his wife, and I am smiling, but I didn't like him even a little bit." A Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg. Trump wrote, "Mark Zuckerberg would come to the White House and kiss my ass. His censorship is terrible. For America, his campaign contributions, even worse." So this book is essentially a bunch of stolen photos. Well, not stolen, they're in the public domain, but a bunch of photos that he didn't take, that he's taking credit for and profiting off of personally, and is using as basically a diss track. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Profound curation. Oh yes, definitely worth the $74.99 plus shipping. Well, this 300,000 people, MAGA chuds, thought it was. Wow. Oh yes, Donald Trump, we're gonna buy these pictures, and your little blurbs next to them, because we can't wait. Wow. Just wow. All right. Moving on, let's go to Madison Cawthorn. Loveland Miller says, "I'm sure there's a warehouse somewhere full of their books that put them in the bestsellers list." No, you're absolutely right about that, by the way. You were absolutely correct. I don't know how many times, Trump people have basically gotten super PACs or political action committees just to go and spend a whole bunch of money buying these books just to put them on the New York Times bestseller list. And then they're stuck with all these books. And I don't think it's just Republicans. I think some Democrats have done it, Hillary Clinton. But still, that is both sad and hilarious at the same time. Like, nobody's into your book because nobody's into you. I don't know. Wow. Just wow. It's amazing what people do. All right. Yeah, let's Madison Cawthorn, everybody. Go to that. Madison Cawthorn recently ruffled a few feathers following his claim that he was asked to join in some drug-fueled sex parties with members of Congress. In fact, I want to show you the statements that he made earlier on a podcast. Take a look, and then we'll show you the reaction. Take a look.
The sexual perversion that goes on in Washington, I mean, being kind of a young guy in Washington, with the average age of probably 60 or 70, and I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? Yeah. And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Yeah. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you. And it's like, wow, this is wild.
No, it's not just wild.
Sexual anarchy.
That's what he's explaining. He just described sexual anarchy. There's all sorts of sexual anarchy.
Sexual anarchy.
It's yep. All right. So look, that's interesting. Now, following that, of course, House GOP members were not happy about this. They were furious because they were giving away their sex parties, or maybe they weren't invited. There's that too. And so they demanded that Cawthorn name some names. Yes, please. We would love to know who's doing those parties. Would really, really love to know. In fact, here's Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska saying, Madison stuff irritates me because it's not true. Really? He'll have to either name names or retract it. He then also had a meeting with Kevin McCarthy, in which Cawthorn kind of backpedaled a little bit, because this is fun. McCarthy said that Cawthorn conceded some of his remarks were untrue and exaggerated. Not about the sex and drug parties, probably. Just about, him being asked to attend them. Because who's going to ask Madison Cawthorn to an orgy? Seriously. Look, I say that because Madison Cawthorn is Captain Buzzkill. All right? Now, in the interview, he claims he watched, this is according to McCarthy, he claims he watched people do cocaine. Then when he comes in, he tells me, he says he thinks he saw maybe a staffer in a parking garage from 100 yards away. Hilarious. Hilarious walk back. Wow. All right, so now, look, there are Republicans, many Republicans that are pissed off at him for narking on them, right? But here you have a former Republican candidate and this QAnon nut that decided to actually jump to his aid. But what's interesting is that there might be a little bit of truth to what she says, just a little bit. And I never thought I'd say this about Lauren Witzke, but she is the far-right former Republican Senate nominee for Delaware. And here's what she said in the Stu Peters show.
We will never know who was on that list. And we know that there were seated representatives on that list. The most powerful people in the world were buying a service from Jeffrey Epstein. They were buying children. They were buying prostitutes from Jeffrey Epstein. And we will never know because there is no justice in this country.
When we hear congressmen like Congressman Cawthorn speak out in this manner, we have to applaud them. We have to stand with them. Because what he's doing is he's showing us behind the scenes. He's showing us behind the curtain. Yes. The emperor's not just naked. The emperor's having sex with a kid.
Yes.
Okay?
And not only that, now McCarthy's getting involved.
McCarthy.
He heard about it. It sparked some outrage. So it's upset some people in the GOP that
I
Madison
bet it
Cawthorn
upset
would
some
have the
people in the
audacity to expose them for the orgy-attending, drug-sniffing, children raping people that they are.
All right, so okay. This is an interesting story, right? Because look, obviously what they were referencing was Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein liked them young. In fact, that was an open secret. Everybody knew. Everybody knew about it. And so at least everybody in power And so here in this situation, you have an insane person actually saying things that have truth to it. I mean, there is a big kernel of truth in some of these charges, right? As far as like sex and drugs and politics, absolutely. Of course there is. People on both sides of the aisle have been caught utilizing the services of sex workers. Now, before I get into that, I'm pro-sex worker. I think that's fine. I think you should be able to legally, have the services of a sex worker. I think that's totally fine. Now, of course, there are people, and what makes them hypocrites here on the Republican side, the right-wing side, is that they're against that, and they're against sex workers. But there's also, of course, them getting caught with sex workers doing drugs. Again, I think drugs should be legalized. But they're having an affair. I don't really care about that, but that's what they're doing. They're getting their mistresses to go and have an abortion. There's so much hypocrisy going on. And again, these are members of the far right that are doing this, the right wing. And so that happens. That does happen. And it's, of course, happening still. And yes, there are also happen to be people that do abuse children. Again, you have powerful people, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, very wealthy, very powerful people, Matt Gaetz, doing trafficking. Notice how they don't mention Matt Gaetz. You also have, though, wealthy celebrities, Woody Allen, Kevin Spacey, all these people, right? But then you go to Republicans, elected Republicans like that had been elected into office. Dennis Hastert, known pedophile, people seeking office. Roy Moore, Rick Rober. So no, Rick Rober is an interesting case as well, because I hadn't heard of him, but he was a Missouri Republican who won elections, even though there's all of these rumors that were following him around of, physical, psychological, sexual abuse of his own children. Some of that abuse was, again, psychological abuse involved drowning puppies. I mean, what a disgusting person, real sick guy. He got elected, and his Republican Party, before they ended up expelling him, basically didn't get involved in his election. They let him beat a Democrat, and then, even when all these rumors and all these allegations were well known, they didn't get involved until after he had won his election, and then they removed him. Well, we'd still rather have this guy than a Democrat. Disgusting. So that said, there is truth in this. There are people that get into power that have some rather large skeletons in their closets, and yes, a lot of them happen to be right-wing, but it's not exclusive. It's not an exclusive right-wing, left-wing thing. And so, now, does that mean I believe in her QAnon nonsense? Oh, no, obviously not. Of course. QAnon is insane. It's fringe. And by the way, the main tenets of QAnon is that it's all Democrats that are, coming in and doing the sex trafficking of the children and then going and drinking their adrenochrome, the life extension technology and things like that. No, that's bonkers. Total insanity. No, what's really going on here is very, very simple, right? What you have is people that are abusers that get attracted to positions of power. That's really it. And they do so because, and this is something that has happened all throughout time, from time immemorial. If there's a position of power, there's somebody in there who's got some proclivities. I was like, if I get in that position of power, I can actually, maybe I'll get away with exploiting some people, some powerless people. Allows them to prey on people. Think about this. White supremacists becoming police officers. That's it right there. Being able to, go and exploit that power to go after the African American community. You have greedy and corrupt assholes that become CEOs or politicians. And of course, one of the more famous examples, pedophiles becoming Catholic priests. Now, does that mean that every single person in power is engaging in that, or that's some gigantic conspiracy? No, of course not. Of course not. Just be, aware that this does happen. And that you should probably take some allegations pretty seriously about the people in power and actually do those investigations. But it also doesn't mean that you should listen to nuts like Stu Peters and Lauren Witzke. Yes, this is, clock is right, I forget that saying, so I'm not even going to try. But what I'm just saying is that, sometimes they're right. There's a little kernel of truth here buried in those mountains of conspiratorial bullshit. And, that's why you have to make sure to investigate credible allegations of rape and sexual assault. Okay. I'm telling you that ADHD acting up again, making me forget like simple statements today. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, thank you. That's the phrase I was looking for, and what my brain would not allow me to recall. And Q still insists that all the problems are on the left with regard to this. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You. All right, moving on. Last story here. I'm going to leave you off on a good note. In one of the most consequential victories in the modern U.S. labor movement, a majority of employees at an Amazon warehouse in Staten Island, New York, have voted to unionize with a brand new union. So this is amazing. Now, workers at the warehouse in Staten Island, known as JFK 8, just voted in favor of being represented by the new Amazon Labor Union, taking a vote of 2,654 to 2,131. So, would you look at that? We've got a victory. And that is even with all of the anti-union propaganda, all of the union busting tactics that were used and utilized by Amazon. We've got a victory. We've got a victory. So now it wouldn't have happened, of course, if it weren't for the wonderful organizers of this, including the former warehouse worker, Chris Smalls, who I think deserves obviously a lot of the recognition for being the public face of this fight. Smalls, of course, was fired after he led a protest outside the warehouse in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. So now, look, he got fired for a bullshit reason. So he was out there and they're like, oh, yeah, you broke COVID-19 protocols against social distancing. So we're just going to have to fire you that day. Oh, but it has nothing to do with you doing a union. Oh, no, not at all. Union drive. No. Of course not. Of course not. So now that said, I'll get to that later. But ALO union leaders have said that their main goals include increasing hourly wages for all workers to a minimum of $30 an hour. Amazon says the average hourly starting pay for U.S. warehouse employees is $18. Now, of course, people's heads in the audience, conservatives that are hate watching, your head probably exploded. But wait, hold on here. But put your brain back in, all right? If wages had kept up with inflation and productivity, the minimum wage would be about $25 an hour. Now think about that, right? I mean, think about how depressed wages have been in this country over the last 40, 50 years. I mean, if you take, again, inflation, productivity, and you apply it to, for example, back in the days, I made $2 an hour in like 1970, 1967. Well, if you adjust that for inflation, that's actually worth about like $19 in today's money. And so, yes, it would be a nice little, improvement here when it comes to wages to reflect the cost of living. but it's not out of the norm. At least when what wages should be. And they should be, again, much higher than what they are. So now, that said, also, Amazon can afford this because Amazon nearly doubled its profit margin in the fourth quarter of 2021 to a total of $14.3 billion. So I'm sorry, but yeah, giving people a $12 pay increase for the work that they do, you can afford it because, again, $14.3 billion in profits. That's despite all of the inflation that has been going on, the increase in supply, in the cost of supply. Now, the unions also push for some other things other than pay increases. For example, longer breaks for workers. Now, you might think, wait, longer breaks? Yes, longer breaks. Turns out working in a warehouse, really not great. And eliminating mandatory overtime outside of peak demand times, for example, Christmas rush, Black Friday, things like that, which makes sense because people are doing more online shopping. So like, okay, yeah, we'll do overtime then to make sure that we meet the demand. Totally fair, totally fair. Now, as I mentioned, working in an Amazon warehouse kind of sucks. In fact, many workers have been required to pick or stow 300 to 400 items an hour during their 10-hour shifts. That is a lot of items. You're also, in order to meet that high quota, that high rate, are incredibly micromanaged on your time to the point where Amazon workers in the warehouses were peeing in bottles. And it's crazy. Crazy. And of course, not hygienic. That is just horrible working conditions. Horrible working conditions. Now, in Washington State, for example, the company received a citation for a willful violation of labor law after a state ergonomic expert determined that the pace and nature of the work Amazon requires creates a serious hazard for work-related back, shoulder, wrist, and knee injuries. Now, as a result, a report last year by the New York Times revealed that Amazon churns through about 3% of its warehouse staff every week, or about 150% in a single year. Now, by the way, that employer churn, that made it really difficult for people to actually organize a union, because sometimes people just wouldn't be there long enough to actually sign up for a union, so they'd have to start reorganizing over and over and over again. Now, as for the anti-unionization efforts, well, that added to the difficulty. And so Amazon revealed in a recent Department of Labor filing that it spent about $4 million on labor consultants that are anti-union just last year. And during the recent union drives in Staten Island and Bessemer, Amazon and firms that it hired had created anti-union websites, convened mandatory meetings during worker shifts to stress the downside of unions. So these are the captive audience meetings, and sent frequent text messages. They're even on your phone. They deluged them with anti-union messages to encourage them to vote no. The company had also, it had been identified, it had been shown, exposed, that early on in its inception, Amazon had been virulently anti-union and had created heat maps in Excel to identify possible hotspots in its network that might be the most susceptible to pro-union activity. And of course, when they would see that, they would then deploy consultants and they would do propaganda. They would tear down pro-union posters in break rooms, even though they're not supposed to, and hold, again, those mandatory anti-union meetings. And so they had all of these different avenues in order to try to crush union organization. And that's not even to mention how that they would intimidate people and fire people for pro-union activity. Now, Smalls, again, he was fired. He was fired for leading a pro-union protest. But again, they claimed, oh no, COVID protocols. But you find out later on that the company's top lawyer had been talking some, saying some really racist things about him. In fact, David Zaplowski, who was the company's top lawyer, in an executive meeting attended by Jeff Bezos himself, referred to his former employee, who was black, as, quote, not smart or articulate, and encouraged the colleagues to make him a focal point of unionizing efforts in dealing with the press. So they went through and did character assassination on him, essentially. Then, after Zaplowski's notes from this meeting were leaked to the press and corporate employees began to protest and question Amazon's action on an internal company listserv, the company, instead of actually addressing these concerns, fired three key corporate activists and began restricting employees' ability to communicate on these large email listservs. So, yeah. Now, obviously, that campaign against Smalls massively backfired. Smalls has continued to organize. He continued to also get in trouble for it. For example, Amazon had called the police on Smalls in February of this year when he showed up to deliver food to warehouse workers. The NYPD, who is essentially the Pinkertons of this era, arrested him. So, by the way, you talk about police, right? Oh, but police have unions. But the police, more often than not, always take the side of large corporations. I wonder why that is. Because police have always existed to defend capital. And that's what that is. So they are acting absolutely as the modern day anti-union police, just like they always had. And it always brings me back to the days when I had made this, when I had talked about what happened in West Virginia with the coal miners, where you had coal miners literally having shootouts with police in the streets over labor rights over the weekend. And so that's what you have. Remember, police have always been on the side of capital, and they will always bust your head if you're on the picket line. That said, even with all of that, Smalls and these organizers, they get the last laugh because guess what? They won. They won. And not just there, but there's also, Bessemer is going to have another vote. That's important because, of course, the first one was tainted by Amazon. And then, of course, you have another Amazon facility in Staten Island that's having a new election, another election, to see if they wanted to be represented by the ALU. And not only that, but you also have Starbucks stores, and Starbucks stores have also unionized in certain places. And so here you're starting to see labor rising up. And I think it's wonderful. Congratulations to all the people who got together, who worked really hard, who faced some very, very serious backlash from this. You did wonderful work, and the work is, of course, this is beginning. The labor movement, I really think, more so than politicians. I mean, you have corrupted politicians that'll do nothing. No, the real power is in labor. The real power is getting together with your fellow workers and organizing your workplace. And we are seeing that across the country. So while these feckless politicians will do absolutely nothing on wages and nothing on benefits and nothing on working conditions, you have real American workers that are getting together, unionizing, and showing the power that labor has in this country. And I absolutely love to see it. Love to see it. All right. Whew. All right. Okay. That's all I have, by the way. Before we go, let's do this. I'm going to read some super chats. And then also some, anything on Twitch, which, not a whole lot on Twitch, actually. Thank you for the new follow, though. I'm a silly girl. Appreciate that. All right. that, I got to pull up the full list here of super chats from you all. You've been very, very kind today. Let's go here. All right. Nope. Nope. That's the name. Thank you for the very kind $3. Appreciate that. Also, Flong Sauce Dragon, thank you for the very kind $20. Really, really appreciate that. Super stickers. It's awesome. Let's see. Gabby Mathis, thank you for the kind $5. About time to unionize Amazon. More up to follow. Absolutely. Madi Darno says, thank you for the show. Relaxed show for the weekend. Trust me, I plan on it. Jonathan Leiter says, happy April from Staten Island's Amazon workers. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Let's see. I have some fun people trolling here. I just want to say, if you're, let's see. Corrupt unions are a source of corrupt government. Well, okay. Union representation is actually an incredibly small portion of the actual workforce. What you have for corrupt government, and by the way, I'll give you some of that, right? So let me be like super kind and clear. Yes, do unions, in giving money to politicians, do they have a negative impact? Well, okay, do they have an impact, by the way, on laws? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Just the same, you have corporations that have a pretty outsized impact on laws as well. I would propose getting rid of both of those influences. Get all the corporate money out of politics, get all the union money out of politics. That way you actually have a real, a better democracy, more representation. Regular workers, regular people having more influence than union representatives. Because I don't always agree with unions with some of the stuff that they back. For example, a lot of unions supported things like Keystone XL Pipeline, which I didn't agree with because of the environmental impact, right? You also have, again, police unions. Very big problem in this country. So, with qualified immunity, being able to get away with essentially murdering people, not a good thing. I don't agree with that. I don't like it. So that money from unions, money from corporations, get rid of all of it, publicly funded elections. That's it. Everybody gets the same amount of time. Everybody gets airtime on all the different networks. The same amount of advertising, equal playing field. And then let's actually have a real battle of ideas instead of a battle of who has the most money and who bought the most politicians. And some unions impose Medicare for all because they invest in healthcare companies. Sammy Vines, another great point. I believe it was the culinary union back in 2020 and 2016 that had given heavily to people that were against Medicare for all, against single-payer healthcare. And so I believe in single-payer healthcare, but there are some of these unions that do, and by the way, they get kickbacks, some of them for selling, or for doing health insurance plans for the company or signing health insurance plan agreements. And so, yes, absolutely, that is corruption. And you're right to point that out. So why don't we work together to get all the corporate money and all the union money out of politics? There you go. There you go. If businesses had a worker to own shares and opportunity, they definitely see a better workplace than with the union shop. So let's see. So are you saying like worker owned cooperatives, perhaps? That is definitely something. Because like, okay, I'm more than happy to have a workplace that is more democratized. So you have people that have more of an investment, more of a share inside of a company, a worker. And yes, you would be right to point out that those people would have an incentive to have the company do better if you own shares in that company, if you're a worker owner. So I'm definitely in favor of that. My grandfather left me shares he got working for U.S. Steel. Let's just say a small amount he bought in the 70s, scheduled for $1,200 a month in dividends. Yeah, well, again, if you're a worker, if you're like a worker owner, yes, you're absolutely more invested in making that company succeed. And that is, of course, what a worker co-op is. And so I'm absolutely in agreement. Yes, we should absolutely do more worker co-ops. Germany, very, very successful in doing things like that, having workers that are part owners of the company as well. But anyway, I've been stun locked long enough. I gotta go. I got some videos and stuff to edit, but I do appreciate the feedback. I do. Again, here I am having a good back and forth with somebody who I assume I don't agree with a lot on, but I think this is good. This is a good dialogue. So I appreciate the perspective and the commentary. But anyway, yes, Madi Darno says worker owners over owner donors. Absolutely agree with that, 100%. All right, everybody, have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you back here Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern, same time, same place, for more interesting stuff. All right, everybody, thank you, love you, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all Monday.
I will eat your ass.
Please clap.
Mike Patterns.
There's some whores in this house.
Obama. Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons. They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door. Disappointed.